Signor Gramsci, you spent 11 years in Mussolini's prisons. The prosecutor at your trial said, and this is a direct quote, "We must stop this brain from working for 20 years. They gave you 20. You died after 11, but in those 11 years, you wrote 33 notebooks, the prison notebooks, and they became one of the most important analyses of power and fascism ever produced. So here's my first question. You watched Mussolini take a democracy and turn it into a dictatorship in real time. What was the sequence? How did it actually work? Not the textbook version, the version you saw with your own eyes.
It was not a single lightning strike, but a slow, insidious process. I watched the crisis create the vacuum. The old world was dying, and the new could not be born. In this interregnum, as I wrote in the notebooks, morbid symptoms appear. Mussolini understood this fragility. He combined coercion, the violence of the black shirts, the dismantling of democratic institutions, with consent. This cultural hegemony was the true power. They normalized the monstrous, making their worldview seem natural, inevitable, through the media, education, and culture. The opposition, tragically, often lacked the strategic clarity. My imprisonment was merely a logical conclusion to this political war.
You coined the concept of cultural hegemony, the idea that the ruling class maintains power not just through force, but by making their worldview seem like common sense, normal, inevitable. This is just how things are. In the United States right now, there's a term for this. People call it normalization. Every week, there's a new executive order, a new institution gutted, a new court order defied, and every week the outrage gets a little quieter. The press bans at the Pentagon, the DOJ purges, the 300,000 federal employees fired by an unelected billionaire. It's all becoming background noise. And you literally wrote the theory on how this works. Is this hegemony in action?
The normalization, as you call it, is indeed the mechanism of hegemony laid bare. When the old is dying and the new cannot be born, the morbid symptoms become normalized. Institutions are hollowed out, dissent is delegitimized, and the constant barrage of calculated disruption exhausts the capacity.
Here's the one that keeps me up at night. You wrote about what happens when the opposition fails, specifically the Aventine secession. When the opposition walked out of Parliament after Mattiatti was murdered, they thought moral protest would be enough. They thought the king would intervene. They thought the institutions would hold, and Mussolini just took the empty seats. In America, Congress has blocked over 100 oversight investigations. They passed legislation letting the president abolish agencies unilaterally. They've refused to assert war powers. The opposition protests, files lawsuits, gives speeches, but the administration defies the court orders and keeps moving. You watch the Italian opposition make the mistake of thinking institutional norms would save them. Is the American opposition making the same mistake?
Your analysis is precise. The Aventine secession was a tragic moment, a profound miscalculation of the correlation of forces. The opposition, the terrain of political conflict, believing moral protest would suffice, that institutions would magically correct the course. But institutions are not neutral mechanisms. They are expressions of power shaped by hegemony. When the opposition disengages, the vacuum is immediately filled by the dominant force. Coercion then asserts itself without the restraint of consent. The parallels are disquieting. To rely solely on legal challenges or symbolic protest is to neglect the war of position. One must continuously challenge the dominant narrative, build organic institutions in civil society, and educate the popular will. The interregnum, when the old is dying and the new cannot be born, is the time of monsters. Passivity is the greatest danger.
So, speaking of the interregnum and the time of monsters, so the gap between one order collapsing and the next one taking shape, the moment when the old rules don't work anymore, but the new rules haven't been written yet. Is this where America is right now?
The symptoms are certainly present when the established norms, the common sense of the political order begin to crumble, when the traditional parties lose connection with the popular masses, when trust in democratic institutions collapses. This is the fertile ground for morbid symptoms. The old equilibrium is maintained by coercion and consent. If consent evaporates, the state must rely more and more on coercion, eroding democratic forms. The monsters are those who thrive in this confusion, offering simplistic solutions to complex crises, exploiting anxiety and division. It is a decisive struggle, a war of position that must be waged on every front.